The other cities are catching up. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian here and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your hashtag not sponsored cheap coffee and let's have a look at this article from the AAP discussing home prices in Perth, Brisbane and Adelaide and how, well, they are surging faster than some of the other cities. Essentially, what happens, Sydney and Melbourne shoot up and then the other parts of the country catch up as people leave Sydney and Melbourne to come to better cities like Brisbane with the beautiful sunshine, the smarter, more attractive people, of course. So let's check this out and pretend we're all genius boomer property investors. So, here we go. Home prices in 3 cities are outpacing their peers. Home prices in Perth, Brisbane and Adelaide are growing much faster than in cities such as Melbourne and Hobart. And the latest data indicates those trends could stick around for some time yet. I'm not surprising. I mean, Brisbane is definitely catching up to Sydney. It's just getting... Our home prices here are getting nuts. Let's, let me bring up Brisbane SQM. Do I have it here? Nope. Here we have, well, here's one example. This is rents in Brisbane. We'll show this here. I mean, there you go, guys. Look at, what should I say? This is why, you know, in 2020, all houses, $467 now from SQM weekly rents have essentially doubled. So, the rental crisis in Brisbane is people just not being able to afford their properties. Not being, well, lower income people are not going to be able to afford that. $700 a week. They're going to have to move further out. This is the sad reality of what's happening here. And that flows through to property prices as well. Home values nationally have risen by more than 35% since the pandemic kicked off in 2020. But growth has not been spread evenly, according to real estate data company CoreLogic. Now, remember when we were looking at examples of property prices or the media reporting on the RBA testing. The RBA was just testing what would happen if there was a 40% property price fall. And this is the thing. You've got to go more than the headline. And I know that people are making the argument that property prices are unfair. Property prices are too expensive. There's another article I want to discuss about 2 young blokes, friends getting together to buy a property and they're looking at something worth $1 million. And the media's going, oh, it's $1 million. It's so big. It's 5 kilometers from the CBD here in Brisbane, 3 kilometers from one of the major universities. Of course, it's going to be an expensive property. Just from the rental demand there, they neglect to mention those things. We'll look at that in another video. But remember, don't compare house prices or property prices to a single income anymore. That's an oddity. You need to have double incomes. You need to compare property prices to household incomes. So if you ever see an article or anything talking about house prices to wages, that's 80s or probably 70s thinking. We're in 2020s now. You need 2 people working in a household. I know it's not fair. I know it's shit. But guys, that's just how it is. That's not going to change within several generations. The culture is just not there. I was talking to a gentleman the other night at a trade show, a guy I know from uni, and he's married as well as I have, and he's become Catholic as well as I have. We've got 7 kids, he's got 2. He's not going to have any more. We're the oddity. So if you think all the Catholics are pumping out the kids, there's absolutely no difference between their use of contraception and birth control and medical interventions as opposed to anyone else in the general population. Now, the reason I bring this up is we're living in a culture where women are pushed for career, where motherhood is put as one step a bit lower. Now, I would argue, and Rachel would argue, that motherhood really is undervalued, and it's a very important part of just keeping our civilization and society going. And it's sad that it's underestimated. The value of it is lowered. that all these women are focusing on or pushed towards career. But that's not going to change soon. Sure, you've got more and more women that I'm encountering, later in life, wanting to spend more time with their kids. So you'll find they'll be flexible and smarter with their employment options. And I'm not suggesting people stop working, but you have to understand the situation that we're in. You have to understand what Australia's like. It's now a 2-income, both people working household as the norm. That's what it is. So let's jump back to this. So keep that in mind whenever you see anyone talking about wages and house prices. That's not what matters. Price growth across hotspots Perth, Brisbane and Adelaide has vastly outpaced gains in other urban centres, including Hobart, Melbourne, Canberra, Darwin and Sydney. At one end of the spectrum, Perth has posted a 62.6% increase in property values in that time, compared to 11.2% bump in Melbourne. Wow, oh boy. That is just 4 years, 60% up in property. So, are people still waiting on the sidelines trying to jump in? Hoping for a big collapse? Because there have been people predicting a collapse in Australian property for like a decade. I know why it's in the news, because it gets attention, it gets eyeballs. I can see it on content I create. But if you've been waiting, how many years do you have to wait before you've missed an opportunity? Because there's an opportunity cost there staying out of the market, hoping to... Essentially, these people who are waiting, they're trying to time the market. It's like when you invest in shares and you try and time it with buying or selling, as opposed to dollar cost averaging. It's bloody hard. People will tell you there's all these analysis and tricks and ways to do it and research. Okay, but the time you spend doing that, you can spend it in your real career earning more money and then just dollar cost average in. What's going to be better in the long term? In 20 years' time, what's going to be better? Having a few wins here and here, or just averaging out nice, boring, steady growth? How's that different from property? We're not changing suddenly to a single income household nation again, where the earning capacity of households are going to significantly decrease. You may get some unemployment increasing if we hit a recession. I mean, it's not going to be easy under Albanese, but will that be significant enough to have a large impact on the market? I mean, if you say here you were waiting for Perth to crash in 2020, you were expecting it to fall 40%. You're screwed now, because it's gone up 60% since then. So even if it drops, you're still going to be, at 2020 levels. If it's a huge correction, which I would argue would prompt government intervention and calls for support for people before they let that happen. I think we've seen that they're quite willing to intervene in the market. Digging into the drivers behind the multi-speed housing market, CoreLogic Head of Research Eliza Owen said there were a number of factors at play. The fastest growing markets were generally starting from a low price base. Yep. Cities such as Perth and Adelaide are still playing catch up to the other capitals, and looking back over the past decade, Ms. Owen wrote in the report. Yeah, that's true. I mean, Perth and Adelaide, you could get beautiful houses for reasonable prices. Adelaide, you could get nice, beautiful houses right in the heart of the city for like 500 grand when I remember. It's probably a few years ago now. Some cities had managed to build more homes than others, which had kept a lid on price growth in places such as Melbourne. Ms. Owen said, see, there you go. It's supply. It's supply, everyone. This is what she's saying here. It's supply. Ms. Owen said, there's a stronger take-up of the first home buyer grant for new homes and the home builder scheme in Victoria, as well as a property investment boom in the mid to late 2010s, was responsible for an influx of inner-city apartments. Interstate migration trends were also playing a role in the multi-speed property market, with softer demands for homes in Sydney and Melbourne, as New South Wales and Victoria lost residents to other states during the pandemic, particularly Queensland. I mean, I shouldn't... I'm one of the original generation of Queenslanders that left Victoria when I was a kid. When I was in grade 4, we moved from Victoria to Queensland. Back when the recession Australia had to have. Ms. Owen said, there were reasons to expect the variety in price growth across the capital cities to hold at relatively high levels over the next few months. For example, she anticipated the oversupply of homes in pockets of Melbourne and Hobart to be ongoing. Long term, the price gap should start to close between different cities, making capitals with slower growth look more affordable. This would help to stabilise capital growth trends in the likes of Melbourne, Hobart and Canberra, and possibly draw down the capital growth rate across Perth, Adelaide and Brisbane, Miss Owen said. We'll see how it plays out in Brisbane. I think with the Olympics coming, with our continued population growth projections here in the southeast Queensland, I don't know. I can't see a long-term significant correction occurring. A separate deep dive into the property market by PropTrack found housing markets with the strongest growth avoided downturns in 2022. When interest rates started climbing in May 22, house prices fell nationally before starting to recover again in 2023. So was that the correction that everyone was waiting for? That little dip down. Stock for sale has consistently shrunk in the top performing markets, which has driven more competitive market conditions amid stronger demand and continue to fuel price rises in 2024, PropTrack senior economist Eleanor Craig said in the report. So there we have it, everyone. Let's have a bit of a chat about this topic, eh? So there we go. We're playing catch up. Property prices are continuing to increase. You've seen some crazy growth in Perth since the pandemic. Now, what's the lesson from all of this? If you were, I think a healthy dose of skepticism with the media, particularly when they're purveyors of doom and gloom. You've got to remember there is an incentive for them to push that narrative. Not for any political or ideological position, but simply for eyeballs. It'll get more attention. It always does. Look at how they frame so many news articles and pieces. Always in the negative, always in the unknown, always with the question that needs to be answered. And we'll see that in the news. I mean, I'm not surprised. I've seen property prices going up. And when you look at it in a suburb, you probably bought for a third of what stuff's going for. And you're looking around going, how is it getting this expensive? These houses are just as crap as when I bought them. It's the land. It's supply and demand. If you look at Queensland, looking around here, then there's not going to be more land. There's going to be more people, more demand. We need more densification. So is housing ever going to be affordable in Australia? I think this is a tale as old as time where people have constantly complained, whinged, and bitched about it. And the reality is you need to move to somewhere more affordable that you can find, usually out, and then come back in later in life. Anyway, guys, let me know your take on this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.